Has sexuality gone way too far? I've always lived with the big three options: heterosexual, bisexual and homosexual. But according to Sexuality Wiki, there are over 50 different ways to identify your sexual orientation or preference. Now, I mean absolutely no disrespect to anybody that may or may not identify in any of these ways, but personally, I'm thinking, should there be a limit to this? Where do we draw the line? I mean, we don't have multiple different ways to describe an orange, right? Oh, okay, maybe we do. But seriously, I understand the need for inclusion, and I get that everybody wants to have their sexual preference and orientation validated within their respective communities. But I just find it all too silly and quite frankly unnecessary. Shouldn't the very ideology around inclusion make it easier and more accessible for people to discover their sexual preference and orientation? I don't know about you, but having 10 different ways to describe yourself as bisexual just seems completely overwhelming. And it must be complicated for somebody to put themselves into that spectrum not knowing which word to use when they basically all mean the same thing. We all experiment, and I think it's completely normal for a teenager in the midst of hormonal development and puberty to question whether they like boys, girls or both. But to then sit them down and say to them, oh, you're a polysexual, will just confuse them even more, and it might lead them down a path where they're not actually comfortable going. But hey, what do I know? After all, I am an outsider who is 90 to 95% sure of where I lie on my sexual orientation spectrum. But even still, I find this extensive list to be utterly ridiculous. I mean, just look at this. So this is my Hinge bio, and I've only recently just looked at how many different sexualities I can list in my bio, so let's have a look. Now granted, you've got the big three, straight, gay and bi, but as well as those, I can also be an allosexual and find allosauruses extremely attractive. I could be an androsexual and find love and romance by sleeping with robots. I can also be an asexual organism. I can be an autosexual and find automobiles extremely arousing. If I'm a demisexual, I could be attracted to anything with the word demi in it. I mean, we are comprised of 75% water, so it's not a stretch to assume that we could be attracted to water. If you have an alien kink, you might label yourself as a grey sexual. If you find yourself attracted to gynecologists, you could be a gynosexual. A monosexual means having the hots for the Monopoly man. If you fancy Omni-Man, you could be an omnisexual. Do you love just rubbing your pans down after you've cooked your meals? Then you might be a pansexual. If you're questioning, just like the Velociraptor here, you could label yourself as a questioning. And if you're attracted to all the different colours of the rainbow, you could be a spectrosexual. And there's loads more to see on the Sexuality Wiki. I mean, what in the bleeding hell is a scoliosexual? Who makes this up? These words sound like you'll find them on a word of the day toilet paper. Look, I get it. Sexual orientation and preferences are complex, but there is no reason why it has to be zygosexual level complicated. Has this all just gone a bit too far? And can we do anything to simplify this list of convoluted so-called sexualities? Because I think if left unchecked, in 30 years' time, this list could be out of control. Again, I mean no disrespect to anybody that might identify in any way on that list, but for me, it's just a bit too much. There is at least 10 different ways to describe yourself as straight, 10 different ways to describe yourself as gay, and 10 different ways to describe yourself as bi. So where do we draw the line? When do we just call an apple, and when do we just call a pear?